He looked at her like she was nothing, just another black woman to dismiss, intimidate, and silence. Gregory Banks had spent years perfecting that look. It was a cocktail of arrogance and apathy, a silent message meant to unsettle. In his mind, power came not just from what you said, but how you looked at someone, how you made them feel small before they even opened their mouth. As a small-town lawyer with a big ego and an even bigger track record, he thrived on dominance. He had made a name for himself pushing people around, especially those he thought couldn't or wouldn't push back. He liked easy wins, and he had a knack for sniffing out the ones who wouldn't put up a fight. So when Janelle Carter walked into his office, calm, poised, and dressed in a modest navy suit, he assumed she was another easy one. He didn't see a threat. He saw a woman who would fold or cry or maybe just beg for a settlement before the case ever saw a courtroom. That's what most did. He didn't see the steel behind her silence. He didn't hear the years of preparation, the late nights, the rejections, the buried rage, or the rising tide of justice swelling just beneath her voice. All he saw was someone he could break. Another woman of color to patronize. Another client he could out-talk, outmaneuver, and outclass. He was wrong. Because Janelle Carter wasn't there to play his game. She was there to flip the board. The lawsuit she carried into his office wasn't just paper. It was a fuse. And when she set it down in front of him and calmly explained the terms, wrongful termination, discrimination, emotional distress, and systemic misconduct, he laughed, a dry, incredulous sound that echoed off the polished walls of his office like the prelude to a storm. But Janelle didn't flinch. She had already seen worse, lived through worse, and unlike Gregory, her confidence wasn't built on bravado. It came from truth, preparation, and an unshakable belief in justice. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for every voice silenced, every opportunity stolen, every door slammed shut in the face of someone who looked like her. What Gregory didn't know, what he couldn't see beneath that calm exterior, was that Janelle had been preparing for this moment her entire life. This wasn't just a case. This was war. And as the courtroom doors swung open a week later, the air inside was electric. Cameras waited, reporters whispered, spectators gathered. Gregory entered with his usual swagger, briefcase in hand, smirk in place. But when Janelle walked in, every eye turned. Because this wasn't just another trial. This was history in the making. And Gregory Banks, who once dismissed her with a glance, was about to watch everything he'd built come crashing down. One undeniable truth at a time. Gregory Banks was the kind of man who got away with things. He moved through courtrooms like he owned them, his silver tongue and tailored suits making him nearly untouchable. For over 20 years, he'd been the go-to defense attorney for the rich, the corrupt, and the powerful. Slick, arrogant, and dangerously well-connected, Gregory didn't believe in truth or justice. He believed in winning. His strategy was always the same: intimidate the weak, out-talk the poor, and bury anything that threatened his clients. And it worked. Judges gave him latitude. Prosecutors feared him. Reporters barely touched him. To most, he was invincible. So, when a local businesswoman filed a lawsuit against a major property developer, Gregory's longtime client, for racial discrimination and unlawful eviction, he barely blinked. Another nuisance case. Another name to silence. He scanned the case file while sipping scotch in his penthouse office, amused when he came across the plaintiff's name, Janelle Carter. He chuckled. "She's a nobody," he told his team during court prep. "A black woman running a bakery in a rundown neighborhood? Please, I'll crush her in pretrial." He had done it before, dozens of times. He'd made single mothers cry on the stand. He'd tied up small businesses in procedural knots until they bled money. He knew the system, and he knew how to twist it. Gregory didn't waste time. He tried to end the case before it began. He sent Janelle a private meeting request under the pretense of discussing settlement options. He came to that meeting with a smug grin, a thin folder of documents, and a thinly veiled threat. "I can make this go away," he said smoothly, sliding the folder across the table. $50,000. No admission of guilt. Walk away and save yourself the headache. Because if this goes to court, I promise you, you won't just lose. You'll lose everything. Janelle stared at him, silent, calm. She didn't touch the folder. Instead, she leaned back, folded her arms, and gave him a look that made something flicker in Gregory's gut. Was it doubt? "I'm not scared of you," she said, her voice steady. "You think you know who I am, but you don't." Gregory scoffed, but inside, he was rattled. This wasn't the response he was used to, and when discovery hit, it got worse. Janelle wasn't just a bakery owner. She was a former civil rights attorney who'd left her firm to take care of her sick mother and later opened her dream business. She knew the law inside and out, and she came with documented evidence: voice recordings, falsified paperwork, internal emails. The kind of receipts that made even someone like Gregory pause. The case he thought would be over in weeks was suddenly making headlines. And Gregory Banks, for the first time in a long time, felt something he rarely did: cornered. The first day of the trial was packed, standing room only. Reporters filled the gallery, court sketch artists scribbled furiously, and curious onlookers leaned forward, sensing history in the making. Gregory Langston, a senior partner from one of the top law firms in the country, walked in with a swagger that suggested the outcome was already written. His designer suit, polished shoes, and cold smirk told everyone he expected a quick and easy win. He didn't just enter the courtroom, he claimed it. Then the judge cleared his throat and called the name of the plaintiff's counsel. "Counsel for the plaintiff, Ms. Janelle Carter?" There was a sharp intake of breath across the room. Heads turned. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom like an electric current. Janelle Carter rose from the plaintiff's table, not as a witness, not as a consultant, but as the lead attorney. She was representing herself pro se. No firm, no legal team, just her. Her suit was simple but sharp. Her eyes held something more potent than intimidation. They held clarity, conviction, and a quiet storm. Gregory's smirk faltered, briefly, but long enough for Janelle to notice. She wasted no time. Her opening statement didn't just tell a story. It delivered a reckoning. She laid out the facts with surgical precision. A Fortune 500 company with decades of discriminatory contracting practices that excluded minority-owned businesses from meaningful opportunities. She didn't just allege it, she proved it. Email threads where executives mocked diversity requirements, hidden procurement documents that showed a pattern of favoritism and exclusion. A whistleblower video of a boardroom discussion where someone actually said, "We don't need to waste time on those quotas." It was all in her arsenal, and she deployed it masterfully. Gregory objected. He huffed. He tried to rattle her on procedure. But Janelle? She stood her ground. She cited precedent like she wrote the opinions herself. She even quoted Griggs versus Duke Power Company and Ricci versus DeStefano without glancing at notes. And when she cross-examined Gregory's star witnesses, she didn't shout or grandstand. She calmly dismantled them, exposing contradictions, timelines that didn't add up, and bias they couldn't explain away. By the end of day one, the courtroom buzzed with disbelief. By day three, journalists were calling it the David vs. Goliath trial of the decade. By day five, Gregory was visibly shaken. His tie was crooked. He snapped at his associate. He fumbled over objections. Meanwhile, Janelle only got stronger. Her arguments were crisp, her composure unshakable. This wasn't just a lawsuit. It was a reckoning. One woman, one case, and an entire system being forced to look itself in the mirror. And Janelle? She wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. Halfway through the trial, Janelle introduced a surprise witness, a man no one expected to see take the stand. He was a former employee from Gregory's own law firm, someone who had worked closely with him for nearly a decade. The defense immediately objected, arguing the witness wasn't on the original list, but Janelle calmly presented the court with new filings, showing that the witness had come forward voluntarily just days earlier. The judge allowed the testimony. What followed turned the entire trial on its head. The witness, a soft-spoken but clearly shaken man in his early 40s, testified under oath that Gregory had knowingly covered up key evidence that would have supported Janelle's client's claims. He revealed that not only had Gregory suppressed emails and internal memos, but he had also pressured witnesses to change their statements, going as far as offering bonuses and promotions to those who complied. The courtroom, once tense with anticipation, erupted into shocked gasps and murmurs. Several jurors visibly stiffened in their seats. The judge's face turned pale, his gavel shaking slightly as he called for order. What had started as a contentious but straightforward case of racial discrimination had now evolved into something far more sinister: legal misconduct, fraud, and obstruction of justice. The implications stretched far beyond the case at hand. If Gregory had done this once, how many times had he done it before? Gregory's legal team scrambled. He demanded recesses, tried to delay proceedings with technical filings, and even pushed for a mistrial. But the damage was done. Every motion he filed reeked of desperation. Behind the scenes, he begged for settlements, offering Janelle's client increasing amounts of money to make it all go away. But Janelle refused. This was never just about money for her. It was about justice, something that had eluded too many for too long. When Gregory's attempts at damage control failed, he turned his attacks on Janelle. He accused her of manipulating the system, of exploiting the court, of orchestrating a public spectacle. But those words held no weight anymore. Not with the jury, not with the press, and certainly not with the judge, who now eyed Gregory with suspicion and contempt. The truth was unstoppable. The jury saw it. Their expressions had shifted from neutral to resolute. Reporters flooded the courthouse steps, broadcasting every update with breathless urgency. Legal analysts called it a landmark moment, a reckoning, a fall from grace for one of the city's most powerful attorneys. And Gregory? He was finished. His empire crumbled overnight. Clients fled. Partners resigned. The Bar Association launched an ethics investigation that very afternoon. As Janelle packed up her notes, she didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just nodded once, steady and calm. Justice had spoken, and it had used her voice to do it. The jury didn't even take a full day. After months of hearings, cross-examinations, and painful depositions, the 12 men and women filed back into the courtroom with their decision. Their faces were firm, their eyes unwavering. There was no drama, no gasp from the crowd, just the crisp finality of the foreman's voice. Verdict: guilty on all counts. A wave of emotion swept through Janelle's chest, but she didn't cry. She didn't collapse in relief or raise a triumphant fist. She simply closed her eyes and let out a long, quiet breath. It was over. Or rather, this part was. She had done it. Against all odds. Against the warnings, the threats, the patronizing smiles, and whispered doubts. Janelle won her case, and in doing so set a new precedent in civil court for workplace discrimination and retaliation. But it didn't stop there. News of the case spread quickly. The transcripts, the footage, her poised testimony, people were captivated. Gregory Banks, once a celebrated corporate attorney, was disbarred within the month for misconduct uncovered during discovery. His name, once spoken with respect, was now synonymous with arrogance, racism, and downfall. Janelle's story went viral, picked up by national outlets who called her the woman who wouldn't be erased. She didn't seek fame, but she didn't shy away from it either. She used the platform with purpose. Within a year, she launched the Equity Table, a nonprofit dedicated to helping minority business owners navigate systemic discrimination in legal and commercial spaces. Her inbox flooded with letters, some filled with gratitude, others with cries for help. Through it all, people asked her the same question over and over. How did she stay so calm? How did she keep going when everything seemed stacked against her? She answered each time with the same quiet strength. I knew he saw me as less, but I also knew I was more, and that made all the difference. Gregory Banks had underestimated her. He assumed that her silence in meetings, her respectful tone, her patience meant weakness. He thought she was just another black woman he could intimidate, silence, erase from the boardroom and the legal record. But he was wrong. Instead, Janelle became the woman who silenced him, with facts, with integrity, and with a fire that refused to burn out. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't throw accusations wildly. She simply proved her truth, and the system, for once, had to listen. Now, the courtroom that once favored Gregory remembered someone else. Not the man in the expensive suit with his decades of power, but the woman in calm defiance who walked in with truth on her side. The name they remembered, etched in case law and whispered in halls of justice, was hers. Janelle Reed, the woman who changed everything. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't throw accusations wildly. There were no outbursts, no dramatic speeches, just truth, methodically laid out, backed by evidence, wrapped in calm resolve. She showed the world what dignity under pressure looked like. She stood tall in a courtroom that wasn't built for her, and still, she prevailed. If you like this story, don't forget to subscribe my channel for more interesting videos. Thank you.